Hi everyone, hi, welcome. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, please drop me a message in the chat box to let me know. Oh, thanks Leo, thanks. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Thanks Melson, thanks Yvonne, and thanks Michelle. Okay, let's allow some time as more participants come in. Yes, hi Marcus. Hi everyone, thank you and welcome to today's session. Thank you for being on time and joining in early. How's your day or week so far, guys? I'm sure many of you can't wait for the long weekend like myself. Okay, so before we start the session, I would like to share that if you have any questions for our speakers, please share them in the Q&A section during or after the speaker sharing, and they'll be addressed during the Q&A. Okay, I can see more people are still streaming in. As we are waiting for them, I'll be playing a short video about SHR in the meantime.
Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us. We will start the session in about 5 minutes as we allow more participants to join in. While we are waiting, I'll be doing a short sharing about SHRI. Here at SHRI, our vision is to be the leading HR authority in Singapore to champion human capital excellence, and our mission is to advocate HR best practices, connect a community of HR professionals, and enhance the HR profession. This is our ACE model. SHRI comprises of 3 entities. At SHRI, we strive to enhance recognition and standing of the HR profession through our professional membership, the Singapore HR Awards and events. At SHRI Academy level, we strive to raise and enable HR professionalism through our proprietary courses and short courses. At SHRI Corp, we strive to provide HR resources, expertise, and value-added services to individuals and organizations through specialized workshops, corporate HR training, HR consulting, advisory, and employment standards audit. We hope to be the HR ecosystem in Singapore for government bodies, HR professionals, and more. These are the national and regional partners we work with. We offer SHRI membership, and through our membership, we strive to drive professionalism with the right connections and development opportunities for the HR fraternity. Here is an overview of the events and webinars we held in 2021. To make this session more enjoyable for everyone, we hope everyone will adhere to these simple ground rules. Attendees may chat in the chat box and share questions in the Q&A section, which you can locate at the bottom of your screen or device. Chats are enabled throughout the webinar, and questions will be addressed during the Q&A session after the speaker's sharing. Kindly note that the chat box serves mainly for interactions and chats, hence, please refrain from typing your question in the chat box as we may miss them. And lastly, post-webinar resources will be sent to all attendees after the event by next week. And that's it for our introduction. Today's session will be a speaker sharing by Edward Chen, Sales Manager, and Ivan Lim, Account Manager from LinkedIn, followed by Haider Dia, Senior Learning Consultant from Franklin Templeton. Once again, thank you for joining in today's session. Please give our speakers a warm welcome in the chat box as we officially begin today's session. I'll now hand over the stage to our speakers from LinkedIn.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Rebecca and SHRI for inviting us to the event. My name is Edward from LinkedIn, together with my colleague, Ivan. So today we'll be talking about developing the L&Ds, cultures in the new normal. I think professionals like me and you, we're on LinkedIn, being the world's largest professional platforms, that provide us a pretty unique position to see what are the demand and supply of the talent and skills, and what are the latest trends. So today we'll talk a little bit more about the L&D trend, but we'll start with what's the market condition we see, and then for L&D professionals, what are the challenges or what are learners' challenges specifically when they're thinking about building a learning culture. And lastly, Ivan will also share about what are the best practices that can help you kickstart the journey in building a learning culture. So let's start with the market trend we see. So when we talk to the client, well, I always like to share this slide, and clients talk to us and they always say, hey, Edward, taking us back 2 years ago when pandemic first started, we need to quickly mobilize our resources, stabilize our workforce so they can work properly, have certain productivity. And now post-pandemic, we are thinking about how to strategize our workforce. So now the Great Reshuffle, I think everybody know about this term, is the byproduct of pandemics. Everyone is rethinking about what's the future should look like. Individuals are thinking about what work should look like for them. And for companies, they are thinking about what's the future of talent should look like, what kind of skill set my business needs to help us grow in the futures. So specifically for companies, we are thinking about either buying the talent or building the talent from within. So next slide. So recently, we did a survey. We just launched a workplace learning report, and there are some interesting findings. The Great Reshuffle is really redefining the work, skills, and the demand for L&D talent. 81% of the executive told us that, hey, even though pandemic is kind of over in the post-pandemic world, they still have some policies to offer some flexibility for their workforce because the workforce need that. And for the skills-wise, it's changing rapidly. LinkedIn, we're able to track the development of different kind of skills. What are the rising skills? What we see, interestingly, is that in the same occupations, compared now to 2015, there are 25% changes in skills. That means even if we stay in the same jobs, there are new skills we need to pick up to develop. And as a result, coming to my third number, the demand of L&D talent has never been stronger. In 2021, there's 94% growth of L&D professionals on LinkedIn. There are so many jobs posted. Companies are thinking about how can I build the best learning cultures. Next slide. So after hearing the global landscape, let's zoom in to Singapore a little bit. I always like to refer to the National Business Survey from Singapore Business Federations. So overall, they kind of seeing that the business are more optimistic than a year ago when it comes to the sentiment, but the business big and small are pointing out the key manpower challenges. And no surprise, attracting the right talent with the right skills or attracting, retaining the younger workforce are some of the key topics and key challenges for our companies, big and small, here in Singapore. But at the same time, next slide. With this optimistic view for the futures, business are hiring more people compared to last year, and they're also investing in more in the staff training compared to last year as well. So from there, we can roughly see the Singapore business are thinking about build the talent from within and at the same time buying talent from outside. So buy and build at the same time. So let's flip around to individual learners. So on LinkedIn, we are able to track what are kind of the learning activities for our members through our LinkedIn learning offerings. And we see a huge spike when pandemic hits, people come to LinkedIn, come to this platform to pick up some contents to help them grow, to build new skills. Just give you an interesting example, next slide. When the pandemic first hits, those are the skills that skyrocketed. People come into this platform to learn about this kind of skill set that's relevant for their professional and personal needs. And you can see those are the virtual kind of working experiences. Some of them are mental health related. So this is to show you that when there is a mega trend shift, nowadays the professionals are getting more and more used to so-called micro-learning or learning on the go and quickly pick up the skills along the way. Next slide. And speaking of that, learning is also a very good way to retain and engage employees, whether it's to help them develop their career path or help them upskill or offering as a perk. from our study, it shows that it's 94% more likely to stay in a company for our employees if our companies help them to build new skills. So with that, I'm going to pass to Ivan kind of to share when companies started this learning journey, build up a learning cultures, what are kind of the typical challenges and what could be the best practices for that. So over to you, Ivan.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Edward. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Ivan, account manager here at LinkedIn. I partner with companies here in Singapore when it comes to their talent, learning, and engagement strategy. So yes, I think what Edward shared earlier was with regards to market trends today. And this actually links to what are some of the L&D challenges and learners' obstacles that we are seeing today. So from here, you can see there's some screenshots of news articles that shows that the Great Reshuffle, which Edward mentioned just now, some call it the Great Resignation, and the speeding up of digital transformation and the enlarging skills gap is actually hitting companies in Singapore really hard, and therefore bring about new challenges HR and L&D professionals face today. As you can see from this slide, that skills gaps are actually widening because skills that are relevant are changing way too quickly. The skills that organizations need today are not static anymore. In fact, the most in-demand occupations and specialties didn't even exist 10 years ago. Because of this, as you can see from the statistics here, 50% of all employees will actually require significant upskilling by 2025, and 33% of core job skills will actually change in the next 5 years, according to the World Economic Forum. For example, roles like social media marketing manager, talent acquisition specialist, all these are roles that we did not even see 10 years ago. Now, we are also seeing the rise in companies, startups in like blockchain, crypto industry, whereby talents they need are requiring new and very niche skills. Not just that, companies in various industries are all digitalizing very fast. For example, even for myself, right, I partner with a few customers and clients in my role. Some of them are in F&B sector, and I can see that they're actually venturing into like tech, e-commerce space. And this means that they require talents with relevant digital and tech skills today, just to align to their business objective and growth plans. So honestly, with the rapid pace of how things are transforming and evolving, I was just thinking on my own, right? If I do have kids in the future, I just got married, by the way. And when they grow up, when my kids do grow up and enter the working world, what are kind of the new roles and skills that there will be by then, right? I think most of the skills that we have today might be even obsolete, right? So yeah, next. Besides, I think we're talking about skills gaps, but I think today, I think just now, I think Edward did mention a few things about the Singapore Business Federation statistics, that we see that today, talent is becoming top management mind, right? But actually, because of that, it comes with learning becomes a hot seat for a lot of L&D and HR professionals, but it comes with a whole new set of challenges, all right? So these are some of the challenges that we see that L&D and HR professionals sees today, right? On the first portion on the top, you can see that it's linked to more engaging the modern learner, more on employee engagement. So what we are seeing is that employees today expect companies to provide always-on learning opportunities to drive their development and stay engaged. If they're not getting these opportunities, they might even consider leaving the company. Also, employees today have a high bar for just-in-time learning experiences that are mobile, bite-sized, and social. And if it's not engaging, they won't bother even using them. Right at the bottom segment, you can see that it's more related to how companies today are aligning their L&D strategy to their company's transformation goals and objectives. The first is skill gaps, which I did touch on in my previous slide. There's a widening skills gap, which a lot of L&D and HR professionals are trying to ensure they close up this gap. All right. Second is about strategic talent development. L&D now plays a more strategic role in organizations. As a result, they are being asked not just only how to solve the skills that we need today, but actually those of tomorrow and the future. So it's not really just about hiring talents today. HR and L&Ds are no longer looking at, okay, I need to hire the best talents, how to hire. But it's also like what Edward mentioned just now earlier, hire and build. How can we look into building within? With the great reshuffle, companies, HR, L&Ds are all looking to build a long-term learning culture within the organization and to promote internal mobility. Lastly, skilled learning. As part of organizations' digital transformation, L&Ds are now looking at optimizing their learning investments as well. So every function is going through digital transformation today, right? And L&D is definitely no different. So with the pace of change today, organizations are all looking at scalable, up-to-date, consumer-friendly digital solutions, digital online learning solutions that your employees can rally around. And this will help to get more out of your investment. Besides looking at the challenges that L&D HR professionals face today, I think it's also important to look at it from a different lens, which is from a learner's perspective, right? From an employee's perspective. But what are some of the obstacles that they actually face today? So being in my role for 5 years, I've been being on the ground, talking to customers day in, day out. These are what I feel that are the top 5 obstacles that learners face today. First, not enough time. How many times have we heard people saying things like, I'm so busy at my role, I'm so busy at my work, I have no time to learn, right? That's one. Number 2, not enough guidance or direction. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. How do I get started on learning? Number 3, not enough recognition or reward. Some of them just feel that by learning, investing time in learning, is there any recognition I'm getting in the organization? Am I learning for the sake of learning? Like what is it all about? Number 4, not engaging enough. They feel that the content that they are being engaged with, they just don't feel that it's engaging enough. They feel that's boring, not intuitive. So in the end, they just give up. They don't bother to use at all. Number 5, it's too hard to find. A lot of times we hear that they can't find which course is relevant. They don't know where to go. They are lost in terms of how to navigate around. So these are the few obstacles that we see today from learners. Next. After looking at the obstacles that learners face, and also looking at how HR and L&D, what are some of the challenges that they face today, I would like to share with everyone today, then what should I do to be successful in implementing an effective learning strategy in my organization? What are some of the best practices and strategies that I should embark on? What I will mention here is that before I touch on the 5 points that you can see right here from my slide, I think just now Edward also mentioned a few things like, talent, it's in hot in market, learning, upskilling. These are very important points that HR and L&Ds need to look into today. And this is in line with what we have seen from our own research that identifies 5 consistent characteristics of how learning professionals and also HR professionals are driving change in the organization and trying to implement a learning culture within the organization. All right, first, you can see from the first 2 points, transformation leaders and C-suite players, you can see that almost more than half, 55%, are actually making L&D a hot topic to C-suites as part of their change management and digital transformation. Third point, you can see that up to almost 81% have actually a dedicated learning budget today. Fourth, advocates. I think it's really important to have advocates within an organization, learning champions, to build this kind of learning culture within an organization and to sustain ongoing learning. And interestingly, we are seeing more than 2/3, 69%, actually said that they prioritize communicating ROI and value of L&D to their own organization. Last but not least, the 5th point, implementation. Up to 69% actually work closely with line managers today on identifying employee needs and rolling out learning initiatives. So I think this leads to my next slide. When we are talking about implementation, rolling out, learning initiatives, I think it's also very critical to look into, okay, then how do I engage these learners better? right? How do we curb against those obstacles that I just shared just now earlier on, right? This leads to my next slide about how do we beef up engagement? How do we engage the modern learners even better today? So I think a quick rule of thumb, I will share that we actually can look into the 4 M's of engagement. Very simple, very easy to remember, right? These are the 4 M's. So let me just quickly run through. Okay, did I lose my slide? Hang on a second. Okay, I think you guys can still see my slide. Okay, I think I lost my screen. Okay, anyways, so the first thing is moments that matter. All right, so moments that matter means seizing the important moments in the employee life cycle so that you can embed this learning mindset in everyone. For example, right, in my role, right, I do see a lot of customers actually make use of things like, okay, when we roll out our learning program, let's put in some videos from our CEO, the welcome message from the managers, just to get, things going, get everyone excited. Not just that, when we talk about employee life cycle, we can actually look into things like, okay, when the onboarding, what happens? Maybe this employee just joined, and after 3 months in a row, should I recommend some courses to them? No, at every step of the employee life cycle, these are important moments and milestones whereby you can actually try to embed the kind of learning mindset. For example, I have this customer, whereby they actually look into performance appraisal period. So before performance appraisal really comes, the managers are actually recommending them courses or recommending employees courses such as how to make difficult conversation, how to tackle difficult conversations, and things like how do you provide effective feedback to your managers. Second, manager involvement, right? This is really important, linked to what I just mentioned in my previous slides as well, that having advocates, having a top-down approach, like setting the tone right, is very important. And we are seeing that today, our LinkedIn survey have shown that up to 56% of employees actually said that they're more likely to engage learning content, they're more excited about learning when the managers actually involve them, or managers actually roll out content to them on what are the skills that they need to upskill in. Third, make learning fun. I think this is a very important and very well-known strategy from a lot of companies that I work with, right? They actually want to spice things up, make it exciting and fun. Not just from the start, right? Like it can be a few months down the road. They want to sustain this kind of culture of learning. So they actually use strategies like gamification, quizzes to make everything fun. I have a recent customer that actually just recently ran Kahoot quizzes, right? At the end of 3 months. And they actually got every learner to come in to do, the Kahoot quiz, give rewards or capital mall vouchers as part of the prize if you win the quiz. And at the same time, they also rewarded, some vouchers as well to those top learners in that 3 months. And they got them to also share with everybody what did they benefit and what's the value add they got from investing more time on learning. So this is, not just spicing things up, but also, getting more advocates among peers. Last but not least, marketing and more marketing. Always make use of your own internal marketing campaigns. I've seen customers using their own intranet, even putting the topic of learning during their town halls. That's a very good practice, right? And last but not least, I even heard of things like creating learning days, like at the end of every month or every quarter, you guys come together to talk about learning, right? This beefs up the whole engagement and culture within the organization. From that, I think I want to move on to then what is it like to have a good learning platform? What is a good learning platform for you? What's top of mind for L&D and HR to look at when evaluating a good and robust learning platform, right? I think these are the 3 main things. First, world-class content. I think content has to be engaging, but not just that, the quality, the credibility of content needs to be strong so that employees feel that, okay, this is something that I can trust, something I can really learn from. Then they will engage. Second, engaging learner experience, right? I think the experience on the platform itself is so important, right? If people find it boring, they just don't want to use it, like what I mentioned. So what I always like to share with everyone is that think about Netflix. Why do you find it very intuitive and very engaging? So this is what a good learning platform look like a Netflix of learning, right? So I think that's number two. Number three, strategic insights. L&D professionals, HR professionals, or leaders of companies will always want to know what are some of the data and insights about the skill gaps that I'm having. What are some of the skills that my employees should be prioritizing right now, or even in the future? And can I track the progress of my employees, like to see what are some of the skills that they are developing? What is not so strong? What should I beef up on? So this will allow you to have a better strategy or long-term strategy and an effective learning strategy in the long run, right? Last but not least, I feel that, while L&D professionals, HR professionals, we are always preaching, learning is important, upskilling is important every day. But we should not forget to make time for our own development, right? Which is so important as well, right? So if there's never been a better time or more important time for all of us to invest in our own skill building. So I wanted to share with everyone today, here are the top 5 LinkedIn learning courses that L&D and HR professionals took in the past 1 year on LinkedIn learning, right? Unconscious bias, for example, diversity, inclusion, and belonging is a very hot topic that we're hearing around today. And of course, organizational learning and development, it's also very relevant, of course, to L&D, right? Last but not least, I want to share this slide. You might be thinking, what's this? It's actually Mount Everest. So to me, I think having an effective learning strategy or trying to build that kind of learning culture could be seen like Mount Everest, like there's a lot of baby steps to take, but it can be done, right? And this is what I have been doing with my customers, my clients, day in, day out, in my 5 years here at LinkedIn. So yeah, if you all guys have any question, even after today's webinar, feel free to contact me, connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, and I'm more than happy to share some best practices in terms of how do you reach that summit, right? And last but not least, right, LinkedIn, be the world's largest professional network. What we do is that we also have a lot of reports, playbooks when it comes to how to best engage, how to have an effective strategy. We have huge variety of them. So these are things that I can definitely more than happy to share with you. Me and Edward, I'll have to share with you. So feel free to contact me. Like I said, this is my email, ivanlim@linkedin.com. Connect with me or Ed on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening through. Hope it has been insightful for everybody. And I would like to pass this time back to Rebecca.
Yes, thanks so much, Ivan, and thanks, Edward, for the wonderful sharing. Hope our audience found the findings and suggestions by Edward and Ivan helpful. Again, if you have any questions for Edward or Ivan, do leave them in the Q&A section below so that they can address them during the Q&A segment. Okay, and now let's welcome Haider from Franklin Templeton, who will be sharing on harnessing the power of microlearning videos to help your employees learn and develop the required skills. Haider, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rebecca. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, great. So first of all, thanks, Rebecca, and as Singapore Human Resource Institute, for organizing this webinar. And thanks, Ivan and Edward, for sharing, an insightful information from LinkedIn. Surely after this training, I probably gonna take one of that, your session that you recommend at the end. All right, my name is Haider. I'm a senior learning consultant with Franklin Templeton in the Global Shareholder Services. In Global Shareholder Services training team, we actually design and deliver a variety, a full spectrum of training and development. However, today, as part of Singapore Human Resource Institute webinar of learning and development strategies for workplace success, I'm going to share how to harness the power of microlearning videos to help your employees develop the required skills. All right. And first of all, what is microlearning? Edward actually mentioned earlier, mentioned a bit about microlearning. So what is it? So microlearning involves 2 key components, right? Firstly, small learning units, and the other one is short-term, meaning fast and quick learning activities. So these are the 2 key components of microlearning. And let's look at a bit about the agenda today. We have a simple agenda for today. So we look at the benefits of microlearning. We compare, what we did previously and now and in the future. We look at a quick insight about how we organize our Riva videos. So Riva videos is basically a system used by Franklin Templeton to store our shareholder register, right? So we are an investment management company, so we have a register to store our shareholder data. Then we look at, I'm going to share a bit about, some suggestions how you can implement, microlearning in your own organizations. So I know that, we have quite a big of, different industries, L&D and L&D professionals. So how can you implement microlearning in your organizations? And lastly, one or two tips, I can share with you in terms of what are the video editing softwares you can use. And we'll come to that at the end of, today's session. So I'm going to start with, the benefits. So Ivan actually earlier mentioned the challenges, of learning in today's world. One of the two things is skills, the skills gap, how you kind of, build that, mitigate that skills gap. At the same time, you also talk about the engagement, the challenges of engagement, engaging new learners or learners. So microlearning can actually address some of those, and we look at the benefits for the learners and also the organization. So as you know, microlearning, it's small units of learning and quick activity. So based on these two key components, it is concise, right? So ideally, a video should be about 3 to 10 minutes, or even shorter. So that is the key part of microlearning, to try to kind of dissect content into smaller chunks, right? And it's concise. One of the benefits of microlearning is learner focus. Obviously, as L&D professionals, as some of us are L&D professionals, we have to create, before creating a learning package, a solution, we do a needs analysis, right? 20 needs analysis. So the learner focus is basically to address that need, right? Firstly, it must be focusing to address the learner's needs. And for some of you may be involved in, user experience design or human-centered design. You may kind of leverage that skills to build how your video would look like, right? To make your video more engaging. So it is a bit about human-centered design or user experience design. So with that in mind, your videos, your learnings are better engagement for the learners. So I've even mentioned quite a lot that the challenges of learning in the current world is to make it engaging. So with that in mind, with addressing the needs, the content need, and building it with the right content, the right visuals, and making it engaging, it is kind of engaging, right? It's better for engagement for the learners. So it becomes better engagement. The learners kind of increase the knowledge better. The knowledge kind of sticks with the learners. So increased knowledge retention. As you know, if you were involved in LMSs, learning management systems, of maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when you want to launch something in the LMS, you have multiple layers, right? You have to do activities, courses, activities, etc. So and the files are even different, right? Back in the old days, the files names are also different. So in modern LMSs, learning management systems, it is easy to deploy. So once you have a video file, it is easy to deploy. And with modern LMSs, you can just drag and drop into the respective field. So it's easy to deploy and easy to access. So with a modern LMS, your employees, has access to a kind of fountain of knowledge, if you like. Ivan also mentioned about, not easy to find, right? So that is also kind of a challenge. So making your learning visible, I'm going to share that with you in the next couple of slides. Not only that it is easy to deploy and easy to access, it is also easy to complete, right? Micro learning. So given a half an hour learning e-learning versus a 10 minutes video, so learners are more acceptable to complete a 10 minutes video versus a 1 hour learning package. So easy to deploy, easy to access, and easy to complete. And if you look at these micro learning benefits, right, for our colleagues and practitioners, you are able to kind of see the overlaps of theories, right? Overlaps of theories that you can put in. So micro learning is a technique and also a theory that you kind of base on other theories like adult learning theory and other things that you can apply. So as you know, one of the adult learning theories is that adult learns when they have to, they think when it's relevant, and to solve a real problem. So micro learning, based on your content that you get from the learning needs analysis, it must solve a problem, a need, right? So hence it makes it, the learners apply when adult learners are practical, right? They only learn what they really need to do. So applying real world examples, and with that, better application on the job. So if you think of the learning thinking skills, right? So first of all is the knowledge. First of all is to know something, and then moving on to understanding and applying. So when someone completes that video, it is even better application rather than just knowing and understanding, is application on the job. So those are the benefits of that, what I can kind of summarize it for you. And I'm sure you may have some other benefits that you can think of, which is, I guess, may fall into one of these categories. All right, so I'm going to go a bit more and show you our previous approach and our current practice. So before COVID, our training is basically more a classroom, right? So we do a lot of classrooms physically, in our different offices, and we do also have instructor-led virtual sessions like this, like a webinar. In addition, we do have, we call it a web-based training previously. I think this term is not so much widely used nowadays. It's web-based training. And this is kind of outdated in terms of content, in terms of technology. It has been used for like 10 years already. So just before COVID, we saw the need to have kind of a more self-paced videos, more bite-sized videos. At that time, we were already capable of developing some videos. So even before COVID, we had a couple of prototypes. That it wasn't, make it to fruition, in terms of rolling out because of other priorities. But when COVID came, about after a couple of months, we saw that it is important to do that. So we formed a team, created videos, and now we have, micro-learning videos. Now we have about 39 videos for our system called Riva. In addition to that, we have our existing, instructor lab. So these videos can be a prerequisite, which is a good thing because people, learners would learn, understand, and apply a bit more and understand a bit more during the classrooms, live virtual classrooms. In addition to the micro-learning videos, this can also be a supplementary learning. And some of you who are, experienced in learning sciences, that, will be called scaffolding, right? To kind of support, extra support for the learners. So that is our current position right now. We are already discussing how to improve further. As you know, it's always a continuous improvement. We'll still continue to do micro-learning videos. We'll still have it. We'll still have the classroom to answer questions, from the learners, from the participants, and we are going to introduce a flipped classroom. So a flipped classroom is an instructional strategy and part of the overall, blended learning approach, right? Where the learners watch videos, read, complete some of the participant guide, all right? And then we do have a lot of policy and procedures, and how are we going to leverage that content for our learners to discuss and problem solve in a flipped classroom. So more to come on that. Currently, we have a couple of plans on that already. There is something that we're going to launch in the future. So happy to let you know that our micro-learning videos are quite successful. All right, I'm going to move on to share with you a 2 minutes insight. So Ivan actually mentioned one of the challenges earlier is like hard to find information. So when you develop a list of videos, it's also important to what Ivan was also saying, marketing. How do you market your videos? Because this is kind of hosted in an online platform. How do you kind of market it? So and this is a video about our Riva. Riva is basically a system used by Franklin Templeton that maintain our shareholder register. So shareholder, we create our shareholder accounts, portfolios in the system. We place the buys and the sells, the trades, subscription, redemption, etc. It's all in the system. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you the actual system. I'm going to show you the how we organize our videos, making it easy to find and a bit more engaging, and letting people know that, hey, this is not a 1 hour training, is a few minutes here and there. All right, so I'm going to show you this video, and please watch. All right. All right, that's a quick video to show you how we kind of organize our Riva videos in 5 series. Next, I'm going to share with you suggestion how you can implement something like this. I know that a couple of industries, professionals are on the call today, also an L&D people. So how do you kind of organize and implement micro learning? So first of all, it must start from a need, right? There'll always be a needs analysis. So this needs analysis can come from 2 parts, right? It can come from the business, which our colleagues from presenters today from LinkedIn Learning, need the need for more engagement. It also can come from a need from a learning and development, right? The push to kind of modernize your offerings and our offerings. So this kind of two-way street of how the learning needs can come about. So it'll start from a learning need to do micro learning and videos. When you start to have this idea, I think the first thing is to consider what software, right? So you need to understand, consider a suitable software. I'm going to recommend 1 or 2 and what we are using. So you should start to do this early in the days, right, of your project. You can call it a project. Depending on the content, right, you may need 3, 4 people or even more team members, which consists of subject matter experts or SMEs and instructional designers. L&D professionals can train, can also design. So depending on the expertise, as what Ivan was saying, and also Edward earlier, a lot of new jobs about L&D specialists are coming up. So all of those skills are really needed for micro learning. And when you have form a team, prioritize a list of topics, right? From the needs analysis, you kind of be able to identify and prioritize simply high, medium, and low. If someone who is more experienced, if you've got a project manager in the team, they'll be able to do kind of a Scrum or a backlog, Kanban, etc. But keeping it simple, high, medium, and low. At some point, you start to do a prototyping, because it is important to have the agreement of a prototype early, right? That will take a couple of maybe weeks for everyone to agree on how the look and feel is, and agree on what would matter for what are the visuals. What coming up to the next one? Consider content, visuals, and the audience. Again, this is learner focused, right? Keeping it, human-centered design. As I mentioned before, user experience design kind of consideration too. And the bulk of time, right? The majority of time, it is the design and development, right? If you want to kind of impose, kind of input, ADI, the ADI framework, this is kind of the design and develop, right? The design and develop. So storyboarding can be done in a Word document, can be done in a PowerPoint, depending on what works for you, and the development of it in the video, right? In the software, publishing it in an LMS. So the majority of time will be in these two, chunks of time. And at some point when you are kind of having a good list of videos, you should think about how to do a resource center. Similar what I just mentioned to you earlier, readily available. You can leverage your, organization SharePoint site or any kind of intranet-based HTML. How do you kind of making it easy to find, right? So what Ivan was saying earlier, hard to find information. So you must, market what Ivan was saying earlier. And when you are kind of ready, launch it. So launching, obviously, you since you have a group, a team of SMEs and instructional designer, agree, what is ready and what is done, right? Definition of ready and what is done. So have a plan for launch, and this also depends on the content. So if you have a new software to be launched maybe 6 months down the road, you may launch a brand new video every 2 weeks in the run up to the launch of the software. If the software has already been launched or products has already been created, then you may do a big bang approach when you kind of launch 30 videos in one go. So this depends again on the way of working. Once you launch, evaluate effectiveness and then always review and improve. So this is what my colleagues and myself we kind of shared. We came up with this to share with all of you. This is what we did. Two things I want to share with you. First of all, although this is a simple flow and is I think a logical flow, some things may run in parallel, right? It can run in parallel. So while you prioritize the topics, you can start to do a prototyping. And likewise, storyboarding. So you can start with one storyboard, and then it can run in parallel with all of the other video storyboard. So that's number one. It can run in parallel. The other important thing to know that iteration, right? So those who are comfortable, with the term called iteration means you're going to repeat some of this process within that phase. Meaning your needs analysis may do 1 or 2 rounds of needs analysis. Your software as analysis can do 1 or 2 more rounds, and just ensure that you got it right correctly, etc. Right? So you can kind of all of this, internal phases would also iterate in its kind of circle, right? Until you get a good version of that state. All right. So I'm going to stop, sharing on this already. What Rebecca will also share with you is this PowerPoint deck. So you can if you find it useful, you can refer to it. Hopefully you find it useful. All right. So as I mentioned, here, consider a suitable software early, because you start to do designing early. And obviously there's a lot of software to choose right from the market. So it's a lot to choose. So we are using Camtasia for our videos. I'm not sure if you know Camtasia. Camtasia works for us very well because it is both a screen recorder, right? So I can record our screen, especially when we do our Riva, when we do our systems training. So our screen will record the cursor, right? We'll record the cursor, and some of those fields, drop-down fields, etc. It's a screen recorder. At the same time, it is a software editing. So you can add bubbles, you can add call outs, you can add photos, audio, etc. So we are using that and we are comfortable with that tool. So there are other two software which I have seen and it works similar and relatively, market, the price is still good. DaVinci Resolve, I'm not sure whether some of you are using it, and also Luma Fusion. Both of these, if I recall correctly, cost about $50 Singapore dollars. To start with, it's a great thing. From the look and feel, it is similar to Camtasia, where you have a canvas. A canvas is normally where, if you think of it from an artist, right? A canvas where someone draws a painting. Similarly, in video, there is a canvas where you start to build your, content on, and that's the canvas is there, and then you have a timeline. What item comes along the way, which bubbles sequencing of the video comes in. So it looks similar to um, try it out. Which one is what is the best for your team and for you. I'd like to actually stop here already. So that will be actually end of my sharing for today. I think we've come to the Q&A segment. I'm going to pass over to Rebecca back.
Yeah, okay, thanks so much, Haider. I hope Haider's sharing was able to provide insights and practical tips, which you may take away from this webinar. And I will now invite Edward and Ivan to join us again for the Q&A segment of today's session. So I'll be flashing the earlier submitted questions from our participants for our speakers. So again, a friendly reminder, if you have any questions for our speakers, do share them in the Q&A section so we don't miss them. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so here we have the questions. So for our first question, we have, will the 70-20-10 approach work in today's climate? I think what Ivan shared earlier does cover a little bit on this question. So maybe perhaps Ivan can start off this question first.
Sure, no problem. Okay, you guys can hear me clearly? All good, huh? Okay, cool. So I think the 70-20-10 approach, I think just to cover what is that before I answer the question, is basically it's a model, a framework that's almost 40 years old, talking about 70% it's more of new knowledge that you get from job experiences, 20% interacting with peers, 10% coming from, like e-learning, classroom training. So I think that this today's climate is shifting so fast. The pandemic has shifted everything to be more digitalization, digital transformation. So I think the key thing here is that we are seeing a shift. It's not that this framework is totally not something that we should have behind our kids. I think it's a good framework after all, it is. But I just feel that the focus now is going to be more on digital learning. There's more emphasis on this. There's more companies, HR and L&D professionals focusing on that more. So I think I think today's climate, I think that shifts everyone's focus to that. And they can see that from Edward, how e-learning has reached its peak because of the pandemic. More and more people are coming on board, spending more time on our LinkedIn learning platform, for example. So all these trends and nuggets of things that we see from market and also from what we see on the ground, we are seeing that digital learning is, the focus and significantly increasing recently. So I think that will be the focus for today's climate. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So if I can add a little bit more on this topics. So I think that framework is nice. So I don't think e-learning is here to take away like physical instructor-led or even peer learnings. It should be coexist and put the learning in the front and center, thinking about what's the best experiences for our learners. And we, being an L&D professional or managers, need to clearly communicate the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? And then thinking about, there's a concept called learning in the flow of work. I think it's championed by Josh Bersin, one of the thought leaders in the industry. So learning in the flow of work, meaning that when I need it, I can immediately get it through a micro learning kind of setting, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, I can immediately get that knowledge. So again, coming back, it's not like which mode of learning takes certain percentage. It's always blended, coexist. But we do see e-learning getting a more important part of driving a learning culture.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what do you think, Haider?
Yeah, I actually echo and agree, Ivan and Edward. 7, 20, and 10, it is still going to stay. It is actually a good model, and it works in the previously and also in a modern digital way. So 10% is what I mentioned. It's in the classroom, of course, learning. 20% is learning from from relationship building, and also 70% on the job. So what we saw, shift, moving to digital, like classroom or, instructor-led virtually. Meetings are also in, MS Teams. We've got team buildings even done in virtually. Last year, our something to share. Our year-end party is also virtual, right? So to that extent, is moving to the digital world. But one thing I'm going to share is something interesting, that 70% of learning on the job on assignments may be challenging, right? Through in an online platform. So there was a suggestion, and it's actually welcome. It was one of our VPs who suggested that for our new hires, there is a special process that we have to do, and it's kind of complex. For someone to learn it on the job is good, but she suggested to do to create a team channel, right? An MS Teams channel, a group, a chat for all the new employees to share questions. So when it came to us, we are able to kind of fit in that request into a learning solution, right? So from our L&D perspective, that's called collaborative learning, social learning. So that works very well, in that 70% bucket of 70, 20, and 10, and it's still very useful. And I'm part of that group because I need to monitor the new hires, how they ask questions, etc. So that's all I got to add. Thanks, Rebecca.
No problem. Thanks so much. Okay, and can we have training and development if there's no performance management in place? Yeah, I think this is especially more for the SMEs and MNCs. Perhaps, Edward, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. So I think performance management sounds like a very serious word, and it can mean different things for different companies. But perhaps let's simplify it a little bit. Maybe you are referring to a KPI for specific job function or specific individuals. So I think even though there's no performance management in place, I think learning is still needed based on the mega trend we see, and also the benefit of learning in terms of retaining, engaging our employees. That's definitely true. But again, I want to come back to the things that I mentioned. The senior leaders, HR department need to clearly communicate the why we are doing this, and then make it easy for our employees to take up some learnings, and also have some learning champions to advocate for you. The learning champions may not only be the C-levels, senior directors, it can also be individuals who can constantly step up and share what they learn. And people always like that. When they see people are doing things, doing great, they want to follow, and that will slowly help build the learning culture. And one more thing, if you are setting a milestone, maybe a KPI or maybe a performance management goal, I think it's important to set a realistic one. It's not like today I have training, next quarter, next month, I want to see some result. I think building a learning culture does take time. So that's something you need to clearly communicate with both management and the learner from an expectation perspective. So those are my few cents of thoughts. Happy to hear from my fellow panelists.
Yeah, Haider, maybe you could expand on that.
Sure. Yeah. So I agree with Edward. To answer the question, yes, learning and development can still take place without a performance management taking place. So performance management may specify that this to achieve this goal for this year, you may kind of complete these development goals, like developing a couple of competencies. So that is, it's in the real world. That's good. However, without performance management, it is still okay, right? Someone can learn, if someone who is, wanting to learn something totally different, like, programming, Python, or even, DNI, would also be, there is no kind of DNR, there is no performance management to that. In addition, even if there is a performance management specification for a learning development need, maybe one or two. So it doesn't limit someone to only develop that 2 or 3, competencies for that year. So one more example I can share with you is like a startup, right? A brand new startup, a new company. They're more focusing on their product, their app. So performance management is not really the priority for them, right? But they still need to do learning on Python, for example, coding. So, so coming to your question, yes, we can have the L&D without performance management in place.
Okay,
And
great.
yeah, one more thing, we have our Singapore Skills Future, and it's not tied to any, performance management.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, maybe Haider can also share how much does a company usually set aside for each employee training fee? So coming from an MNC point of view, maybe you can give us a range.
Yeah, so this got to do with whether you have a training team in house or whether you don't have a training team in house. So the budget is what I understand is calculated by the total budget of training budget divided by the number of employees, and that got to consider whether you have an L&D function and how many L&D function that you have across the organization. Is it only sufficient for L&D team to deliver training? Potentially, you need an external vendor. So in Franklin, we are happy to let Edward and Ivan know we are also having LinkedIn Learning. So it's actually a great tool for us. So things like that is also part of the cost, right? In addition to L&D function, you got the LinkedIn MOOC, the massive open online courses, right? That kind of LinkedIn, Coursera, etc., Udemy. So all of those things, we have LinkedIn Learning. In addition, maybe some of the external training. So depending on the regulation, depending on industries, you may need to be regulated and certified. So some professions must be certified. And likewise, in Franklin Templeton, there are some of our professionals are certified in different areas of their expertise. And that adds up to the cost, right? And there's one more thing that organization will do, and also Franklin Templeton is a nice thing to do, and this costs a lot of money, which is called a tuition assistance program. So if someone want to kind of continue learning through an academic route or some certification courses, may apply through the local HR to apply for that. So in a nutshell, the budget, if I can answer you in a vague manner, it is actually depends on the company, depends on the industry, and the year of that budget allowance. In a nutshell, I also did a bit of research. It has been increasing. This research has been done by the e-learning industry, and they saw an increase by about 5-10% every year. And just before COVID, it's about $1,300 per employee, right? And during COVID, it kind of a dip a bit, but I know based on what Ivan and Edward mentioning, you see more take-ups along the way. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Edward, do you have anything else to share on this?
Yeah. So on this budget specific notes, I think Ivan and I increasingly, when we talk to the client, we also see company use that as a benefit or perk to incentivize or engage or encourage the employees. And this is also linked to the culture they want to build. So when it comes to budget, do think broadly. Maybe there are some allies within your organization, maybe come and band can work together to see what makes sense for your organizations.
Okay, sure. Okay, moving on to the next question. How do we assist employees who aren't willing to learn or are afraid to go to classes due to a lack of self-esteem? So I guess this refers to more of like bigger classes or like physical classes. Understand that Ivan shared earlier in his sharing about some factors that may prevent students from not wanting to take on courses. Perhaps you can expand more on that, Ivan?
Of course. I think when it comes to this question, the key thing that came to my mind was, the importance of setting that kind of learning culture. Having advocates, which me or even Ed mentioned just now during our presentation, right? Managers coming in, that whole culture that that you inculcate within an organization is very important, so that learners don't have that lack of confidence or they're just afraid to even start their learning journey. Everybody is in it together. I think that kind of culture they said, we talk about the 4 M's of engagement, obstacles learner face, how we can curb that. So I think that's really important, how to build that learning mindset. And of course, another thing that I want to mention from this question as well is that I think different generations, how we actually engage different generations will also be key, right? When it comes to this, because, we are talking about, different learners have different kind of expectation when it comes to what they deem as engaging, or what they want or what they like in a learning platform. So that is something, that's another broad topic to talk about as well. So I think this is something that L&D and HR professionals can look into as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, understand from Heidel's, from Franklin Templeton, we have your microlearning, and earlier you were mentioning about flipped classes. So do you think this question would apply to what you are implementing within Franklin Templeton, Heidel?
Yeah, I guess, this question is quite broad, as what Ivan was saying, it's a lot of discussion around this topic. And I see that there is two questions. So this one is like unwilling to learn, and the other is afraid to go to classes. So unwilling to learn, right? Something can also be addressed through microlearning. So I like to call it in two parts, right? So unwilling to learn means do not know what to learn, right? You do not know what to learn. So it's kind of unwilling. The other part of unwilling is do not want to. So do not know and do not want. So it's two different parts. If you do not know what to learn, it could be because the concept is too complicated, right? So if you want to afraid to learn, right? So concept may be too complex. So that is where the L&D professionals can relook at the content, relook at the instruction, and making it easier. And one of the means is through microlearning, and what Rebecca, you asked earlier, through flipped classroom. So unwilling to learn maybe because it's too complex, when you read a whole process and to be able to understand it's a bit complex. So by having microlearning and flipped classroom, we address that. Unwilling to learn, right? Do not want to learn is a bit of a different story. And sometimes we do have many other programs where, example, we have compliance related programs where we have a list of completion statistics results. And normally every round, there'll be like 5-10% who have not completed. And we don't take it that they're not going to do it, but maybe they have forgotten, they're on holidays, etc. So I think that's that part. On the self-esteem, right? This is again like what Ivan was saying. It takes a bit more time to understand. I like to call it, it's also in two perspectives. Self-esteem is because of past experience, right? Past experience, they might have encountered some situation that make them a low self-esteem. And the other part is like the future, right? If they attend some training, they might need to present something, they might feel a bit shy, etc. So how do you address that? I think somebody was saying that it take a longer process, right? Take a long process. Some of these behavioral competencies, unlike skills, right? Skills development to process an account opening, for example, it is easier, right? You follow steps. After a few rounds, you get to know the skill and you can become the expert in that pretty fast. But to address all of those, behavioral, you may take a longer process. It may take a couple of years. That's my, opinion. I'm gonna share with you. Thanks, Rebecca.
I think your opinion also touches on the next question on how does a company carry out an effective L&D plan for its employees and get their buy-in for learning success. More?
Sure. How company can carry out an effective L&D plan? So first of all, right, the plan must address the need. I think that is, it must be given, right? It's a given thing. So if there's a need for something, the solution must address that. So if there is a need about A, and then if someone will solutionize topic B, it doesn't match. It's not effective at all, right? It doesn't address the needs of the training. So that's number one. Number two, right? I think most of us are L&D, practitioners, experts, and I think all of us can develop a very nice, L&D program, L&D strategy, etc., and leveraging on L&D frameworks. There's a lot of frameworks, Kirkpatrick, Eddie, and if you're going down the route of learning sciences, there are a lot of other theories that you can put into place. So with all of those knowledge of an L&D practitioner, so how to answer this question, right? To get the buy-in, you have to go back and take one step back, right? Is your plan bringing value to that, to the business? So you may have a very nice plan, a very robust, but it doesn't bring value to the team, to the organization, then it's not really effective. So on that note, I'm just keeping it simple, going back and ensure that your solution kind of bring value, right? To thanks, Rebecca.
Problem. Perhaps Ivan, maybe you have any thoughts on that? Oh, or maybe Edward, do you echo Haider's thoughts?
Yeah, definitely echo what
Sorry,
I think. Yeah, Ivan is on mute. So Ivan, over to
I
you.
think just now I didn't. Oops. Okay, so yeah, definitely I have some points to share about how do you best carry out effective learning plans. So I think I did touch on it just now in some of my presentation slides as well. But just to sum it all up, I think the first thing, like what Haider mentioned, right, to really know and align to the expectations of modern learners today is very important. What do they want? What do they expect? What do they want from an e-learning platform or a learning experience? What do they want to get out of it, right? And I think second thing, it's also relevant content. It's not just, wow, great content, but how is it relevant for them? Do they feel that it's relevant to their everyday role or what they want to see or what they want to upskill? So for example, right, talking about more on, the LinkedIn learning platform itself, right? It's very data driven in a way that it pushes out based on person's interests, the person's even career profile, and even a person's like activity, right, on LinkedIn or on the LinkedIn learning platform. So it pushes, right? It's a bit like Netflix. When you watch like a thriller movie, because you like thriller movies, it's trying to push more thriller movies to you. So you can see that this makes it more engaging, it makes it more intuitive, and yet more motivating and more like, oh, today I'm going to learn. I think on this platform I can learn something that is very relevant to what I think that is needed for me to learn. So, and last but not least, I think it's important to also look into like how we track learners' progress, understand skill gaps. Do we have insights to, okay, what kind of skills my employees are developing? Where should I be prioritizing my skills in next, let's say 5 to 6 months? What should I be prioritizing for my learners and why? Relay that to your learners as well, right? So I think all this is part of how you can carry out an effective L&D plan, and at the same time get buy-in from your learners and to let them see success as well. Yeah, hope that helps.
Okay, I think I'd like to just raise this question to all the panelists. How do we best raise awareness on the need to take time to upskill when the department is managing very busy operations daily for many months? Maybe Edward or Ivan, could you address it?
I can quickly take that. I think everyone is always super busy. There's so many things. That's why the value of learning in the flow of work and micro-learning really come into play. It could be, for example, I'm going to have a performance appraisal for my employees. Then I can quickly go in, take a 5-minute, 10-minute courses on how to have a performance conversation effectively. What are the framework that I can use? So those little things will help make learning less of a burden, but more like a fun, and also help me when I really need it. So that's why when I need something now, I have something to learn. When I need something new, I can set aside a longer time to learn it. So I think that's the main purpose of a robust learning platform should provide, and that will help raise awareness of a learning culture.
Okay, I think that's great. And we have the last submitted question. How do we measure and justify the impact of learning with our management? Perhaps Haider can address this.
Yeah, I think measurement is important. What get measured gets done. Mindset. At the same time, from a learning and development perspective, we leverage the classic Kirkpatrick model, 1 to 4. 1, the reaction, the learning, the behaviors, and the result. So even the happy sheets is is good data. The learning, the assessment, the quiz is also very good data. Observation is a lot of data. Research data is also very good, and also the result is actually important. I think the question here, it is the measurement of the result. So if someone were to attend a sales training, so if assuming I train, a sales professionals, and today they are kind of selling $100,000, for example. After my training, they sell 200,000. So which is a good thing, but it may not be attributed to the training, right? It may attribute to the learner, right? How learners are, dedicated and determined to perform better. So this is only one of the avenue of, one of the result of that, increase in sales. So how to measure? Simply all of those, Kirkpatrick model, and putting it into a nice, there is this thing called chart junk, right? So you've got a lot of data, in the modern world, got so many data, and how are you going to present it to your management, right? Avoid the thing called chart junk. And that's important, what is meaningful to share. And if you're moving into what, LinkedIn is doing, in the cutting edge thing about measurement is called learning analytics. So analytics of a lot of data that you can learn from the learners, to collect and gather data about the learners and how to improve the learning. I think that is even more useful from a learning perspective. And there is actually a lot of that in LinkedIn. And we've got LinkedIn accounts, and that is part of the LAD. We call it the LAD, the Learning Analytics Dashboard. So when you log into your, learning LinkedIn, like you can share a bit more, you get to see your progress. You get to kind of see what, Evan was saying, what it got pushed to you via, the, artificial intelligence. If you like horror movies, like what, Ivan was saying, they will kind of recommend you all of those things.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
thanks.
Thanks so much, Haida. I think a follow-up from that question. We have another question from our audience. Does your company bond the staff if the cost of the course is high? So I'm assuming if, let's say, the company decides to send an employee to take on maybe a master's program that is related to their work, and the costing is high, but maybe midway the employee decides to leave the organization. So then what would a company normally then handle in this situation?
Yeah, I guess typically I think that's a common thing. If higher education, master's program, etc. Definitely it's typical to have a bond, but it's typical. That's my quick answer actually.
Okay, great. Okay, and we have another question from the audience. Although manager-endorsed learning could add pressure for employees to complete, would it become a source of stress? Mindful that the whole pandemic episode and adjusting back to the workplace, in addition with the Great Resignation, how do we do this delicately and market it internally? So I think this was covered a little bit earlier, but could maybe one of the speakers address a little bit on this? Perhaps Ivan?
Yeah, maybe I can just take this question on. I think that's a really good question. Like, if let's say managers were to roll out courses, right? Does it give pressure like, oh, I must learn because it's my manager asking me to do it? But I think that what's more important, that's why I think it's all taking a step back again to see like the whole kind of culture, right? Like whereby we're all in it together, we are learning together. It's not like, oh, if you don't learn, you are, or like giving you so much pressure to learn. But so I think taking a step back, I think it's really understanding the team manager have the responsibility to understand, okay, what's something that is useful and relevant for the learner. If not, I will feel like, oh, this is a waste of my time. When you start feeling that this is a pressure, this is like wasting time, this is when you already feel that, okay, this learning content, it's not even something that's relevant to my job or it's going to be useful. Yeah. So, I mean, I myself feel it, right, man? Even in my scope of work, I do get learning content from my company, what I need to learn, need to upskill. Yeah. So but I like it because I feel that, okay, it's relevant. They hear me. So I think there's a lot of things to look at in terms of understanding the learners more. Second, which I thought that it's also something that I want to share, is that employee survey as well, right? I think today we are seeing an increased importance in doing more pulse surveys, employee engagement and employee survey. These are big keywords that a lot of HR professionals that I'm hearing from networking sessions have been, so long gone are the days whereby people do employee survey once every 2 years, but now today people are talking about, okay, my employees are more disengaged. The pandemic has thrown us into thinking, how do we engage my employees better today? Look at employee sentiments. pulse surveys. It's just like going to like health check, right? You go for more pulse, more health checks. You get more. You understand your own health, right? So companies need to do more pulse checks on our employees now. So I think that's also very important, so that that leads to effective learning culture, effective learning strategy, and also mitigate this pressure thing that managers are afraid of. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Ivan.
No problem.
I can see that Haider would like to address one of the audience's question. Perhaps you could expand that.
Sure. So there's a question about, so our Riva videos is being hosted in SharePoint. Yes, our Riva videos are hosted. We make it available in SharePoint. He's hosted in our LMS, right? In our LMS, learning management system. So it's directly linked to our LMS. So when someone completes it, it is tracked and completion status in our LMS. Our LMS kind of works, it has that similar functionality that you kind of recommend your kind of preference, something like what LinkedIn has too, from that learning perspective. And then the other question, is it a SCROM file? So no, it's not a SCROM file anymore. So we used to develop SCROM files, previously in our previous softwares and previous LMS, which requires SCROM files, or even the previous one files. But now our video files are in, it can be an MP4, it can be, basically an MP4, right? From MP4, drag and drop to the bucket, and that's it. So LMS is really great, the new LMS. Hope I answer your question.
Okay, that's great. Okay, another question is, they would like to hear from our speakers what you observe to remain the core learning trends or areas despite changes brought about by pandemic, industry revolution, etc. Perhaps we could just have the speakers take turns. Maybe Haider can start first.
Sure. I think what will stay is our, one of the things that we, our bread and butter. So Riva is our important system. So we have to have a solid training package. What is our other bread and butter from our team? It's, our high risk program. It's a kind of a compliance related program. We have a module every 1 or 2 months. We have a calendar specifically for that. And that would actually stay because it's compliance related. Although not the fun thing to do, what we're talking about, how to make training fun. Content-wise, it's not so fun, but we try our very best to kind of make it, as fun and interactive as possible. So that would stay in, as I can see, because it's the importance. Just give you one or two topics that kind of rings a bell for you: cybersecurity, right? Fraud prevention, and specific things that is for our industry that, not to bore you. So cybersecurity is one of the key things that will stay for us. Information security, yeah, all of those things.
Okay, maybe Edward can go next.
Yeah, I think regarding the L&D, the trends, I think they are, I would say, two things that I observed. Previously, they talk a lot about maybe learning management systems or L&D, but nowadays we hear this term more and more is learning experience platform or skills building platforms. So that says a lot about the mindset shift of how companies or industries are looking towards what learning L&D's role should be. It's really about helping company building the skills they need. Then the next question is, how do we know what are the skills inventory we have in the company, and what are the skills that I could potentially need in the future, and how can I bridge the gap? So I think that's one thing that I observe. The second thing is increasingly we hear the importance of soft skills, because previously when it comes to L&D, there's a lot of like compliance or hard skills. Those are still important. But to keep organization connected together, especially changing the mindset, soft skill is extremely important. How you communicate, how you collaborate. So that's why there's also another term. Instead of calling it soft skill, we now call it power skill. So I think those are the two things I observe.
Okay. Maybe Ivan?
Cool. Yeah, I think Haider and Edward both mentioned really good points already. Just want to add on to what they have mentioned. Something that came to my mind I thought would be nice to share with everyone. It's this keyword, skills-based hiring, right? I mean, we talk about L&D a lot of times. Okay, what learning programs, what focus on skills, insights, data, market trends. But taking a step back, I think we have seen, if you read the news last year in the Straits Times, actually mentioned that Singapore is trying to move towards more skills-based hiring, right? And that's something that's happening in APAC as well. And that means it's no longer about, okay, what degree qualifications you have, but it's more of skills-based, right? Like whether you have the skills. And because of that, that actually makes L&D and HR professionals more focused, and also learners ourselves to focus on, do we have the relevant skills in the market today? Do I need to upskill myself? What's the skills gap? Which I think Edward and Haida all mentioned. So I think that is what I want to mention, and yeah, hope that is insightful as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see if there's another question that we can have. Okay. Will having a training roadmap for employees help the organization in the long run? Maybe just a quick opinion from any of the speakers.
Yeah, I think it definitely helped. In fact, in LinkedIn, even ourselves, when we talk to the client, we suggest this concept of learning path. Like, for example, employees reaching certain stage as an individual contributor, but has aspiration to become a people manager. Then how do we help them bridge that gap from IC to a people manager? Then you could kind of curate a learning path for that. That could be one, or as simple as the new hires, they may go through a lot, need to pick up company process knowledge at the same time, also get the things running. So maybe we can also curate another learning path for that. So it's definitely helpful.
Okay, Haida, do you have anything to add on?
Nope. Thanks, Edward. We are doing something similar. We have, learning path, curriculum. We also even build learning path in LinkedIn, right? So, as admin of LinkedIn Learning in our organization, we can create also learning path for different modules. So I think that's a good thing. Since we have a lot of learning professionals on the call, I like to kind of share this term called metacognition. So learning path, it's actually kind of relating into the term called metacognition. It's like learning how to learn, like learning about learning. So having a path is you are learning about what you're going to learn, which is a really good thing. So I really like that question. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'm quite mindful of the time as it's now 5:27 p.m. Can I just invite the speakers to give a closing remark? Perhaps Ivan can go first.
Yeah, sure. To end it off, I think that building a learning culture, having the right effective learning strategy takes time. It's always a journey that I always take together with companies that I partner with. So, but it's always something very satisfying and something very you feel good about it, right? It involves so many people, different stakeholders, all your employees. The main people of the organization. People is the main part of the organization, and yeah. So I think yes, it is the most important. It's never been a better time now to focus on learning and upskilling. And then, passing on to Edward.
Yeah. For me, very simple. I always tell my client, baby step or no step. So let's start now. Over to you, Haidar.
Yeah. So for me, when I receive a training request, I kind of assess. Training happens in two realms, right? One's a skill set, right? Something that we need to perform something to learn a new skill, to be able to do something like a coding, etc. in a system. And the other one is just a mindset. So skill set and mindset, these are the two things which kind of all trainings will kind of fall into. And what Ivan was saying, this it takes longer from a mindset training. So if you have a mindset training about maybe customer service, it may take like 1 year or so, versus training in a skill set, which may be a bit faster. So in a nutshell, continue to keep learning, continue to learn. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks so much to Edward, Ivan, and Haida for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come onto the webinar. And thank you for participants for joining us in today's session and for making it to the end. Thank you and have a great long weekend, everyone. We hope to see you at our next event.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Happy Friday.
Everybody, bye. Bye, Evan. Bye, Evan.
Thanks so much,
Bye,
everyone. Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.